Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Justin from Justin and Max Games, and I'm here for another special two-player review of the game, Dragon Boats. Dragon Boats was a game that I didn't know about, and then right around Christmas, there were all these sales going on, and then they listed this game, and I looked at it online, and I noticed that the game was the first game of a new company called Maple Games, but more to my immediate attention was the designer, Michael Schacht. Now, Michael Schacht, if I'm pronouncing the name right, we have a couple other games by this designer. One of them is behind me called Hansa, and another game, which is in another drawer, called Patricians, I think. And one thing I remember about this designer was one, my wife wins every game by this designer, and two, more importantly, is that the designer's rule set is pretty almost, it seems like super simple, like too simple, but yet the gameplay is deep. I remember that with Hans. I was like, this doesn't seem too difficult. I mean, what's here? And then when you actually play the game, there's a lot going on. Well, let me say that I think Dragon Boats, of the various designs by Michael Schacht that I've played, this is my favorite one. Now, I like the other two, but this one has more strategic directions, more ways of winning, and I like that very much. Now, of course, this is a two-player review, and I've played this game at 2 and 3 players. I haven't played it at 4 players. First of all, is it similar at 2 and 3 players? Yes and no. There are some other games. I don't know if you can see it back there. Yamatai. Yamatai is a great game, and at 3 players, and I think we've played it even once at 4 players, it's light and fun and, strategic, but more tactical more, and just like kind of a romp. At 2 players, it is cutthroat and a completely different experience. This one, it definitely feels different because it's a bidding game, and of course, bidding with 3 players is way different than 2 players. The game length is the same, and there's these neat cards that kind of tell you when how long the game is going to last, and you can kind of anticipate, how long do I have to do these things? There's many more ways of winning in this game than first meets the eye. It seems like, you bid on items to be able to get onto boats, to get your guys out to these various islands, and then you're getting tiles that you can multiply at the end, and of course your guys, if they're close together, they also get, for adjacency, they get score. However, there's also the mountain region where you can get all of these bonus tokens for endgame scoring, and also the cards which you could trade treasures into to get these bonus cards. You could either do a blind draw, not recommended necessarily, or you could take what's there, and that could definitely, you know what the other player has and when they're going to spring that on you or what they're going for. Everything is kind of open. And let me say, I'm going to rate, here's the funny thing. I'd probably rate this game about an 8.5. However, I'm going to downgrade it to probably around a 7.5 to 8-ish region. And that's because not the gameplay itself, which I think is fantastic. And I hope that the company comes out with more games, and I'd love to see more Michael Schacht games. Neat game everywhere. The issue for me, and my wife and my son disagree with me to a certain extent here, is a little bit on the component side. Now, the boats are awesome, but it was a real pain to put them together. And some of them didn't really quite go together. The components are, to me, that's where it kind of, it downgrades a little bit. The personal tiles, which are supposed to go in these little spaces here, they don't quite fit, so they're either laying on top or on the side, or, simple things like that. The money in this game is really neat, that you can only have maximum of $6 and you're just counting it back and forth. The gameplay itself, very straightforward, but very deep, very interesting. All plays that we've had of this I've enjoyed, definitely. But some other weird decisions it's almost like the art and graphic design, for me, was like it needed a couple more eyes looking at it, a couple more pass-throughs. The rule book needed more explanation on a couple of details, or just they're just not there, or they're not quite clear. There's a couple of tiles that there are misprints on, and unless you catch it by comparing the book to the tile, it can kind of skew things off. So I've had to, and I hate doing that, I had to write on the tile what it actually is according to the book. Again, I say there's a couple things that in the rule book, which is well written, there's just some things not quite clarified there. The art, which is neat, there is still some kind of, I don't know, again, it seems like it needed one more go through. Like when you first look at the board, and I'm not going to do a close-up of it here, but there's all these little lines and crevices, and of course it's beautiful seeing the mountains and the waterfalls and all this, but you have to know what's adjacent to what, and on first view, or even on multiple views, you're kind of like, is that adjacent to that? It could have been done somehow graphically designed slightly differently, maybe heavier lines, something. Also, some of the color choices. For example, my character that I played this last game was purple, and we used as the neutral character, because it's purple, orange, blue, and then another version of purple. Sort of like this maroonish, pinkish, purplish color. And this neutral color and the color that I was playing with were so close that even sometimes I was like, oh, that's the neutral. I didn't put a bid on that one. That's not my color. And even looking at the boards for those two, I mean, they could have chosen black or white or tan or something that's very distinct. So those things do kind of downgrade it a little bit for me. The piggies are very cute on the tiles. All of the food is very, very clear. I like that they chose cards for the food and for the treasures rather than little tokens, which would have, one, probably made the game more expensive, and two, unnecessary more little pieces floating around. You know exactly what you have. Maybe on the player boards, some spaces for, the collection of your tiles, so you kind of have like an organizational way of doing the game. I mean, it's not a big deal, but I really feel like that could have pushed it up another level. There is an expansion for this game, which I'm looking forward to finding as well. So what is my final word on Dragon Boats of the Four Seas? Does this work at 2 players? Yes, it does. Is it fun at 2 players? Absolutely. Did I like it more at 3 players? Yes. I don't know how it would work at 4 players. I'm sure it's just fine. But would I recommend it at 2 players? Absolutely. I hope that if you do find this game, you pick it up. It's different than most other games of this type, but really, really interesting. These bidding games and moving around. Another kind of like a couple other little things, like there's no score pad that goes with this game. And at the end, I'm taking out, a pad of paper and kind of writing down things. There's no scoreboard that goes around it. And the fact that the boats, which are sizable, they're moving from here to here. It seems like it's almost like there could have been more. Regardless, I do recommend it. What am I going to give it a rating of? I'm going to go on the high end. I'm going to give it the 8. I'm going to give it the 8 that it deserves. So that's my final review for Dragon Boats of the Four Seas. Awesome.